Welcome to Dave Talks Ball in this October 31st, 2024 episode. Happy Halloween, everybody. Had a blast earlier with my son. I dressed up as Maui from Moana. My wife went as Moana. My son went as Hey Hey, the little chicken, if you're familiar with the show. I went as Maui, this blow-up thing. My wig was too small. It was all over this. I wanted to wear it on the show. It would have filled up this whole area. You wouldn't have seen anything. So I did it. Still had to get the show in. Was asked, hey, you still doing the show today? Of course. We got to get the predictions out to the people. Hey, we can go play from 5 to 7 o'clock, do the trick-or-treat thing, but we have to be back for Dave Talks Ball. We got to get the people what they want. Well, let's get right to it first. Prediction Thursday. You know how I feel about this. On the fruit of our loom here. Fruit of our loom, I should say. Fruit of our labor here. Paying off with the prep of these 7 games. Again, if you haven't gone and checked out our previews for myself, Cole Thompson, Chris Phillips, throughout the week that we sprinkled in Monday through Wednesday, I encourage you to. We do it for every game in the SEC. I think they do a pretty good job. Humbly, I say that. But 5 matchups within the conference will break down. 2 outside, Oklahoma, Maine, UMass, Mississippi State, Alabama, LSU, Missouri, Texas, all on bye weeks this week. First college football playoff reveal. It's upcoming Tuesday, election night. So election night's not the only big thing that night. We got our first college football playoff, and people will just be like, college football playoff. Who cares? They'll adjust it. No, the first one is going to be key because I want to see where they're going to set these teams. It's usually tough to overcome it initially. Like where you set a team initially is you see where you stand. You see where you're saying. Now, some of it's going to work itself out naturally. There'll be some chaos. How much, I don't know. But it will be key to see where they set these teams initially at these rankings. But I'm going to give you what I think the college football playoff is going to look like as of today on Halloween. Obviously, I'm going to be wrong at some point. Some things will be different. But I think in my mind, how I see things working out in the Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, ACC, Group of 5, Independent, Notre Dame, I'm going to tell you what I think is going to happen. So I'll reveal that to you. It's money-making weekend, week 11. We went 7-2 last week. We're at 44%. Now, remember, my goal, my promise to you, 55% before season's end, folks. I'm going to get that done for you. That's going to continue for week 10. It'll be week 10 money-making weekend. I'm going to get that done for you, folks. I mean, we kind of have to, right? Kind of have to, right? I feel bad if I didn't. And then finally, SEC basketball. I'm going to give you my predictions here right off the bat here in a matter of seconds. I'm going to pull up the graphic. You're going to see all of them at once, but I'm going to give you just some snippets initially of what I think of each team here, where we can adjust from a standpoint of that perspective. Again, we released an SEC basketball preview, myself and Chris Phillips, yesterday. We recorded it 2 days ago yesterday. Go to the SEC Unfiltered channel. Let me put the link in there for us here, guys. I'll put the link in there for you guys to check out the basketball portion of our video. Let me pull it up for you before we get started. Here we go. I'll put it in there for you guys, just so you guys can go see it, check it out. Let's see. Here we go. Put it in the comments. There we go. Right there. Put it in the comments for everybody. If you want to see it, check it out. I feel like it's a good preview myself and Chris Phillips did for SEC basketball. I will be taking over the full-time basketball analyst. Chris will obviously help as well. But let's get to it. Let me share the screen real fast so you can see the prediction. Let's see. There we go. Right here. Make sure it's on there. Yep. As you can see right there. So I'm going to go 16 through 1 for you. Start with 16, Vanderbilt. Mark Byington's first year coming over from JMU. They brought in A.J. Hogard coming over from Michigan State. It's probably their best bucket getter. Again, we released this today. We get a lot of flack. People are kind of bothered by it at times from all over from some people mad Mississippi State's not higher, Tennessee's not higher. It is what it is. I hadn't had any Vanderbilt fans being mad about 16. I have some Missouri fans at 15. But, again, I think 2 through 10 is kind of a toss-up. And I think 12 through 16 is kind of a toss-up. So you could shake that up a little bit. I just think first-year coach, the NIL war chest in there, A.J. Hogard, who I feel like he's played college basketball since I was in middle school at Michigan State with Tom Izzo, is your best guy. I just think you're going to be limited in a really good league this year. So they're coming in at 16th. 15th for Missouri here. I don't know. Can Dennis Gates, they went winless last year. I think it is going to be an improved team. I really do. I really think it's going to be an improved team across the board here. They brought in the Tony Perkins kid. Still got Tamar Bates, who I like a lot. Can Caleb Grill take that next spot? Tamar Bates, that guy that plays both ways. Jacob Cruz, Josh Gray transfer from South Carolina. I just kind of want to see it. I can't be too high on the team. And I know basketball is even worse than football from the rosters change so much. I don't know, guys. I just don't know how much more improved this team can be. I think it will be improved. I mean, you can't be any worse, honestly. But I think overall, though, I think 15's fine. I think like 12 through 16 you could toss in a blender. I feel pretty good. Those teams will be in that spot, but you could shake it up either way. Let's see. Let's go next here. We got number 14. I got Oklahoma. I like Porter Moser, new head coach, new team in the league. Just I don't really know how much is really. You got Muhammad Wagee, who came over from Alabama, who's going to get real minutes for him. I don't know how good this team can really be, if I'm being completely honest with you. I just don't know how good this team can completely be. I think you guys who asked Kobe Elvis sitting bad. I think Jalen Moore's fine. Sam Godwin, the grad transfer potentially. Again, like I mentioned, Muhammad Wagee coming over from Alabama, was at West Virginia before. I think this is just going to be a team, again, I think until they start helping him with NIL, it is just not going to be that good across the board right now. Again, I like Porter Moser as a basketball coach. He's a good basketball coach. Remember when he was in Chicago coaching Loyola Chicago, I thought they did a phenomenal job. Hadn't really transitioned to Oklahoma. Has not made the tournament yet for whatever reason there. Coming in at 13th, South Carolina brought in Nick Pringle from Alabama. You still have Colin Murray Boyles, who I think does a really good job over there. Lamont Parrish, real bad first year, good second year. How do they kind of bounce back here? That's kind of what I see from that perspective. I want to see how this team kind of bounces back here if I'm a South Carolina fan. And I should say bounce back. The third year here will be key. How much better can you possibly be is kind of what I'm looking at here from that. I mean, I just want to see how good this team can really be across the board. Like I'm not a huge believer right now. I want to be proven first. And again, South Carolina fans in the comments were not real fired up about where I had them. I just don't think they're in a spot. The league's so good, folks. The league is so good right now. I don't think people understand that. Someone's got to finish 10th. Someone's got to finish 11th. This could be the best basketball year in SEC history from a tournament perspective, a number of teams that get in the tournament. My point being, I know you added 2 teams, so the odds of that going up naturally go up. But still, I'm just not totally sold on South Carolina. You can make a case they can be where LSU is, though. Again, like I say, in 12 through 16, I think you could shake them up in a cup, pull their name, and I wouldn't be surprised. LSU is all going to come down to Tyrell Ward, Matt McMahon. Is this a hot seat year for him? I mean, I think he's one of those guys who could be on the hot seat. I think if Buzz Williams wasn't awesome at 8, if they weren't really, I should say awesome, they weren't an NCAA tournament team for whatever reason. I think they will. You can see on there. I have him third. We'll talk about him in a minute. I would put him maybe on that too. I think Matt McMahon, third year, but they're just okay. They made the NIT last year. I don't know how much LSU fans really care about men's basketball, honestly. I mean, they pay Kim Mulkey $1 million. It's about after football season, it goes to baseball season with Jay Johnson and the boys. I don't know. It'll be depending. I think they're right there. I think Georgia coming in at 11 could be that next team. It takes a new spot. Mike White's third year, Blue Kane. They bring in a true freshman, Asa Newell. Have some really good guys back. Silas Demery's back. I think this team's that fringe bubble team. At the very least, they'll be on the bubble. I like Mike White's team this year. Mississippi State got a lot of flack for this. For whatever reason, they think they should be higher when they finished 9th in the league last year, and the league's only improved. I do like Josh Hubbard, one of the best scorers in the league. It's undersized guard U, folks. It's undersized guard U. Brought in some good additions. Got Cam Matthews back, physical presence. Brought a couple other shooters that should help Josh Hubbard. I just think they're the definition of the league just got better and someone has to finish 10th. Texas, they got Trey Johnson, Arthur Kaluma, Shamon Mark coming over from Arkansas. Big year for Rodney Terry. I think they need to make the tournament. He took over for Chris Beard when things were rocking and rolling. I got them at 9. Again, I kind of feel them, Mississippi State, Florida, and Ole Miss are kind of in that shake that next bucket. Florida, Todd Golden's third year. I like the Elijah Martin transfer they brought in for FAU. He had like 30 points, I think, against Charleston the other day. They still got Walter Clayton Jr. there, Alec Condon. They got some players. I think they take the next step this year. Again, guys, finishing 7th through 9 in the SEC this year is good. You're a good basketball team. You're going to make the tournament. I think Florida's there as well. Ole Miss, I think they could be the big riser in this league. Chris Beard, year 2, usually his teams take that next step. Brought in assistant coach, former Texas Tech coach who took over for Chris Beard, Mark Adams. He's on staff now, defensive guru. I think they take that next step. Matthew Burrell, Juju Murray. They brought in the kid from Seton Hall over there. I think they're going to be pretty. Sean Padula coming over from Virginia Tech gives them another shooter. I like Ole Miss. Rick Barnes in Tennessee coming in at 6. They didn't look great in their exhibition against Indiana. And I know exhibitions mean nothing. 2 years ago, Alabama was the number 1 overall seed. They lost in an exhibition to TCU by 30. So to my point, it really doesn't mean a lot. Take it with a grain of salt. But if Zakai Ziegler is supposed to be your bucket getter, the 5'9", 5'10" guard, the offense I think is going to really struggle. I like the Alex Okaporta you brought in from Ohio State. I think he could give you some good minutes in that front court. I think the league's so good. I just don't know. Kentucky at 5. This would be a good spot for Mark Pope in his first year. Bringing in Jackson Robinson, who was the 6th man of the year from the Big 12 over with him from BYU. They brought in the Lamont Butler kid, one of the better guard defenders, came over for San Diego State, was on that San Diego State team that lost the national championship 2 years ago. They brought in Berea, 3-point shooter. They shot 50% in their first exhibition last week. Berea, dynamite shooter from Dayton. They're going to spread the floor, spread you out, and shoot a lot of threes. I think very similar to what Alabama does. Andrew Carr will be in that, the Wake Forest shooter. They didn't have a single returner. So we'll see from that. Auburn coming in at 4. Auburn fans don't like this. Bruce Pearl and them are going to be good. Janai Broome could be up for player of the year. Best big man in the country, I think. One of them, if not in the SEC at least. Guard play. J.J. Pegues coming over from Furman. How does it translate? I've talked to people close to that program and talked to people who've seen J.J. Pegues play. They've seen him play at Furman for a while. They never really thought he was that guy. It was like that dude. He thought he was a good player. But that dude, when Bruce Pearl's really good, he is a dynamite guard like Chris Lofton at Tennessee, Jared Harper at Auburn on that Final Four team. Do they have that? Does Denver Jones take that next step? Does Todd Pettiford, who looked like he had the better exhibition against Furman, who else am I missing there? Yeah, the Kelly kid transferring over from Georgia Tech who can shoot, but he's not a create-your-own-shot guy. Guard play will determine because I think they got good depth in the backcourt behind Dylan Cardwell and them as well behind Janai Broome. But I'll leave them there. I think Buzz Williams and the boys coming in at number 3. Wade Taylor, Anderson Garcia's back. They got a lot of guys back, A&M does. So I like this A&M basketball team across the board. I think they got a lot of returnees, brought in some good depth guys as well. I mean, even in the front court, Henry Coleman. Remember, it's really a lot. As long as it doesn't turn too much into the Wade Taylor taking bad shots. But that's kind of how they play. It's Wade Taylor, you're our guy. Off your misses, we're going to get a lot of offensive rebounds and defend our ass off. Solomon Washington, good player. Jace Carter. They got a lot of guys back, a lot of returning production from this perspective here. Zurich Phelps, another kid they brought in from the transfer portal from SMU. So I think they come in at 3. I like Buzz Williams' team this year. Number 2, I like Arkansas. John Calipari is there now. They got Nelly Davis from FAU coming over. I mentioned Elijah Martin. We got 2 FAU players who are in the Final Four who are now in the SEC. Elijah Martin at Florida is a really good player. Nelly Davis, who you remember in that FAU Final Four run 2 years ago. DJ Wagner, if he can take that next spot, that will be key for Cal. They get Trevon Brazile back. Jonas Adu transferred from Tennessee. Big Z, we remember him from Kentucky. He moved over with Cal. I think Boogie Flan's going to be a real deal point guard, maybe up for the freshman of the year in the league from watching them beat Kansas in a scrimmage the other day. And to be fair, Hunter Dickinson was out. Rylan Griffin was out for Kansas. So there it is. But I think Arkansas is going to be pretty good. Not a lot of depth. They need guys like Billy Richmond to step up if they want to get deeper. But I think overall, that core 6, 7 guys. And Cal likes to play with a shorter rotation. They can stay healthy. They should be pretty good. And then Alabama. I think it's Alabama that I think 2 through 10, any of those teams could beat each other on a given day. And Alabama's in that too. It's basketball. You could lose any game of the week. But I group it really Bama in their category by themselves, Arkansas through Mississippi State, and then 11 through 16 kind of as well. I'd probably put Arkansas through Mississippi State, Georgia at 11 by themselves, as weird as it is, because I think they're on the bubble at least, and then 12 through 16 being by themselves. But Bama return Mark Sears, Grant Nelson, Latrell Wrightsell, 2 McDonald's All-Americans in Darian Reed, Aiden Sherrill, brought in the best big man out of the portal, and Clifford Omari from Rutgers. LeBaron Filan has been a massive surprise. Not a massive surprise. I mean, he was committed to Kansas at one point. Really good player down there in Mobile, point guard, can do a lot for them. It's the deepest team in the country, folks. It's the deepest team. Mo Diabate is kind of that guy. Just can kind of do everything for you. He's all over the place. That's who you kind of think. He's kind of like Draymond Green a little bit. Can get rebounds, second chance baskets. I mean, Alabama went to beat Grand Canyon in the second round of the NCAA tournament without Mo Diabate, getting a bunch of second chance buckets and ones, going to the free throw line. They played exhibition games against Wake Forest, who's projected to finish in the top 3 of the ACC this year, beat them by 20 plus. Played Memphis, didn't even play well. Was up 20, ended up winning by 12, and that was without Grant Nelson, Latrell Wrightsell, Aiden Sherrill, and then Josh Youngblood, who was the AAC Player of the Year from South Florida. He transferred. He had ankle surgery. He'll be out until conference play in January. So they're missing a lot of guys, but still dominating in exhibitions. I just think it's a deep team. I think, honestly, if you took away Bill Self and just the name Kansas, I think Alabama would be preseason 1. And again, Bill Self's earned that Hall of Fame coach. But just wanted to say that's my projected basketball finish. I'll be taking the lead on the basketball coverage this year. Chris will be joining us as well. But I got 10 teams making the SEC team NCAA tournament, going through Alabama all the way through Mississippi State. Couldn't get courage enough to go up 11. Couldn't go up 11 there. But I think 10 is the right number. It's a really good league. Could be the best we've seen in quite a while, guys. But transferring or moving on over to predictions. We're moving back over to football, folks. We're moving back over to football. But before we do, let me talk to our sponsor real fast. This episode, don't forget, guys, Dave Talks Ball, brought to you by Roback. Go to roback.com and use code SECU for 20% off your first purchase. Phenomenal clothing over there. Golf, any of your favorite team sports attire. You got some good stuff over there. I already sent some stuff for a Christmas list from Roback. Need to use that 20% discount there. But let's get to it. Ole Miss at Arkansas. Ole Miss line's going up since the last time I checked. -8. I had it 50. I had it -7 coming into this. Point total 53.5, setting the tone for you. I think this is a trap game for Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss, if I'm being honest. Got the Georgia game next week. Ole Miss hasn't won in Fayetteville since 2008. And before any Ole Miss fan corrects me, I'm aware they've won in Arkansas, but that was in Little Rock. I'm talking about Fayetteville. That's where the game is played on Saturday. Since 2008, my senior year of high school. It's been a long time. Ole Miss hasn't played a complete game, I think, all year, and they will need to this week and next week if they ultimately want to make a run to the college football playoffs. And I don't even know if 10-2 is going to be good enough. I'm telling you, we'll talk college football playoffs here in a minute, but rumors of potentially things going on internally with guys like, not naming any names, Wink, Walter Nolan. We'll see Ole Miss, how they handle this. Lane Kiffin is kind of mad they don't get a night game next week against Georgia. I don't know. Ole Miss better be careful. Arkansas is that team. And to my point, what Arkansas team do we get? And I think this team goes as far as Taylon Green takes them. High ceiling, low floor team. What team do we get? I mean, the team that beat Tennessee looked pretty good defensively. I think Tennessee helped them out a little bit. Thought you were going to kind of show up against LSU, another big opportunity. Didn't let it happen. Thought you went and handled business really well. Bobby Petrino was in his bag last week against Mississippi State and Start Bowl. I thought it was one of Taylon Green's best overall games. Now you get another opportunity at home against another really good team. Arkansas wins this. They start chipping away, getting that 7-8 wins. If they don't slip up against Louisiana Tech later on, for Ole Miss, it's a must win. Got to get to the continue. Got to win out to get to the college football playoff. Now, I don't think that's guaranteed. But what is going to happen, folks? Ole Miss has their back against the wall. Heading into a place, again, they've struggled for over a decade and a half now. If I'm Ole Miss, I try to establish the run early. But if it's not, I'm not going to be attached to it. I'll abandon it early. But can Lane Kiffin and Charlie Weiss Jr. do that? The Arkansas secondary isn't good right now, so I think there will be some plays through the air that you can capitalize off of, even if you're able to throw off play action. I mean, even against Mississippi State, that game was a blowout, but Mississippi State in the second half was getting some chunk yards. Now, for Arkansas offensively, can you get the run game going against an Ole Miss run defense that's number 1 in the SEC, but they're only 6th just in conference play? Now, again, I think two things be true at once. The run defense has definitely improved. J.J. Pegues, Xavier Harris, obviously Walter Nolan, they've improved that. But that soft non-conference schedule probably has inflated that a little bit. It's kind of proof. Number 1 in the SEC, but when you just factor conference games, they're 6th. Bad news for Arkansas, though. Jaquindon Jackson was reported out yesterday on Wednesday's injury report. But I think something Bobby Petrino and Taylor Green can take advantage of is picking up positive yards on the ground for Taylor Green. You got to be at Taylor. If 5 to 6 yards is there, you just have to take it, keep us ahead of the sticks. I thought Jackson Arnold had some success last weekend on the ground. It wasn't massive, but it just kept him ahead of the sticks in the first half. If Arkansas can't run the football, I think it's going to be a long day, though. If Taylor Green doesn't take what's in front of him, if Russell can't get anything going on the ground because Jaquin and Jackson's out, I just think Ole Miss is going to put together one of their better offensive performances. I think it's just going to click this week for them. But if Taylor Green, I'm telling you, in Arkansas can keep it and limit mistakes, this will be a close game. The big question in this game is I feel like I kind of know what I'm getting with Ole Miss. Can they get that run game going? It looks like Ulysses Bentley will play a little bit. But the whole question of the game to me is, what Taylor Green do we get? If he's going and he's playing like he was last week against Mississippi State, granted, he'll be playing against better defense. But if he can play to somewhat that level, it's going to be down to the wire. If he plays like he did against LSU, a little timid, stuff like that, if Pete Gold and them are dialing up some blitzes he hadn't seen, gets a little timid, doesn't really play with it himself, I think Ole Miss can get comfortable and kind of run away with this one, maybe by double digits in the fourth quarter. And I think that's what's going to happen. Arkansas so high and low, just so high and low. I think Ole Miss plays better than people are expecting. That line's getting higher for a reason. Give me Ole Miss, 31-20. I think Ole Miss wins this football game because of their defense, and I don't think Taylor Green plays up to expectation this week. Joe K's disagreeing, baby. Take Hogs +8. Hogs can win this one in Fable. Yes, they can. They can definitely win this one. I agree with you. Taylor Green's playing well. It's open. Mark Bird, go Hogs, he says. Goat Richardson, Woo Pig Suey. Ryan Cleveland, appreciate you listening. Go Gamecocks. We'll talk a little Gamecocks here in a bit. Let's go to our next one. We're going in chronological order. Just from the SEC games, we'll briefly cover Oklahoma, Maine, Mississippi State, UMass. But next, Vandy at Auburn at Jordan-Hare Stadium, 12:45 p.m. Eastern on the SEC Network. Auburn -7 right now. 7.5. Sorry, it's going up. Point total, 48.5. Excuse me. Setting the tone. Hugh Freeze and Auburn picked up their first SEC win of the 2024 season last week in Lexington. Can they turn that into some mid to late season, really late season momentum? Auburn comes back home to Jordan-Hare since the Oklahoma game in late September. Remember, they were gone for a month. We're at Georgia, had a bye week, at Missouri, at Kentucky. Yeah, they're back in. Can they turn that into a late season momentum? Keep that in mind. Vanderbilt comes off a tough loss to Texas, which came down to an onside kick. I never really felt like Texas was going to lose that game. I mean, did y'all? But Texas never really ran away with it at the same time either. I think two things can be true at once. My main question for Vanderbilt is, how banged up is Diego Pavia? He's not on the injury report, but he is definitely banged up. He had to go out for a little bit. You had to see Nate Johnson, the Utah transfer, who I think fits that system if they had to play him, could be serviceable. I don't think he's Diego Pavia, though. He's the difference maker. I think Diego Pavia is almost just like Bane from Batman to me. You just can't put him down, but he isn't 100% here. Do the horns. I mean, do the doors. Do the Vanderbilt Commodores hit kind of a late season wall due to some depth? Well, we'll see. But what's going to happen? This is a game I trust DJ Durkin, the defense coordinator for Auburn, come up with a great plan against this Vanderbilt offense. You got to think, as the weeks go on, this Vanderbilt offense is continue to put more film on tape. More defense coordinators are talking. Hey, how are you defending this guy? What are we doing? I thought Texas did a really good job last week. Now, Texas defense is better than Auburn, but I do think DJ Durkin's a really good defensive coordinator. Going back to his Florida days, even when he was head coach at Maryland, had defensive coordinator at Texas A&M. He's a good defensive coordinator. I expect a good plan this week. I think this is a big number 9 Asante Samuel game, young cat DeMarcus Riddick, who can kind of be that second-level defender that makes plays at the linebacker position. This is assignment football this week. If you're a defense coordinator, you have to tell all your guys, hey, I say it every week, this isn't a stat game. You can't be going for the big play. You have to do your job so the guy behind you can do his job and the guy behind him can do his job, and we all win. So you got to do it against a triple option, spread type option like Vanderbilt. And I think from a Vanderbilt perspective, you got to think, if you're a Vanderbilt defense, I think Auburn comes in with this familiar game plan they had last week against Kentucky. They feel like they have momentum on the ground right now. They're going to continue to feed Jarquez Hunter. And lines usually don't get me like this, but something feels off. Why is Auburn favored by 7.5 in this game? If you've watched these teams all year, Vanderbilt has been the better football team. And again, I've said Auburn hasn't been bad. They just do things bad teams do, from penalties and just doing things that lose you football games. But they're moving the football. They get something. It's not the worst football team you've ever seen. I've predicted them the last 2 weeks against Missouri and Kentucky. Went 1-1. Think they should have beat Missouri. But some of this line feels off. I think Pavia is more hurt than people lead on. I think Auburn carries that momentum from last week and plays their most complete game of the season. Just to fill, give me Auburn 28-20. I'm just going to follow Vegas' lead here. I see a bunch of bets and money are on Vanderbilt. I think they're going to – I think Vegas is going to win big on this one. I think this is a trap. This isn't just free. They're not building big buildings in Vegas for no reason. They're not just giving people money this week. Just like, you know what? We really think Vanderbilt's going to win this one, but we're going to make Auburn a 7.5-point favorite. Joe K, me and you are just disagreeing today, brother. Still love you, and I appreciate you listening, but you're taking Vander. You're falling for the bait, Joe. You're falling for the bait, big dog. Texas is on a bye week, and you're just falling for the bait. Vandy did a good job for Texas' run game. They play like that with Auburn. I'd say Vandy. Yeah, I just think something's off, Joe, in all seriousness. I think Vanderbilt, I think Diego may be hurt. Maybe they have some other injuries. I don't know. If Vanderbilt's healthy, I like Vanderbilt. I'm with you. I definitely take the plus 7.5. I don't know, though. I'm going to follow Vegas' lead here. I just feel dumb if I took Vanderbilt and I'm like, Vegas told us all week. I mean, I think Auburn opened up as a 5.5-point favorite on Sunday. Give me Auburn, guys. At home, they're due a big win. Wild to say Auburn's biggest win of the season be against Vanderbilt. Moving to the next game, the world's largest outdoor cocktail party, baby. Florida versus Georgia. Georgia minus 14.5. Point total 51.5. Yours truly, born in Jacksonville, lived there till I was 5. So a lot of people don't know that, but I was born there. But yeah, 3:30 p.m. Eastern on ABC. Georgia favored by 16.5. Point total 51.5. Setting the tone. Both teams coming off a bye week playing their best football. We just heard this game's going to be moved to Tampa and Atlanta in 2026 and 27 due to stadium construction in Jacksonville, which I don't just go – I understand why they don't. Go home and home during those 2 years. I'm one of the few, the proud, that love it in Jacksonville. I think it's a great environment, 50-50 split. I mean, it's not 50-50 split like the Cotton Bowl with Oklahoma and Texas to an extent. But if both these teams ever got really good again, Georgia is, but if Florida would ever get up to that tier again, this would be a phenomenal atmosphere. But I think for these 26, 27, next year, 25 will be the last year in Jacksonville. Go home and home campus. But I know why they don't want to do it, because if they go home and home and people get a taste of that, people won't want to go back to Jacksonville. But they announced it this week. They'll be playing in Tampa in 26 and Atlanta in 27 while they do stadium construction. But mentioned both teams playing well. Florida sneakily playing pretty good football, maybe the best of the Billy Napier era so far. Looked really good against UCF, who I know is not great. Probably should have won in overtime in Neyland at Tennessee, and then dominated a Kentucky defense. DJ Lagway in his first big game environment against the best defensive minds around with Glenn Schumann and Kirby Smart in the game. What Georgia do we see? Do we see the motivated team that we saw in Austin 2 weeks ago, which feels forever ago because Georgia was on a bye week, so was Florida? Or do we see the team that's been struggling a little bit in the first half against Auburn, against Mississippi State? What's the motivation here? Kirby, Mike Bobo, Todd Hartley, this is a big game to them. They're all Georgia alums. When Kirby and Mike Bobo played, they lost to Florida a lot. So when they get a chance to run up the score or go beat Florida to make up for it, whether they would admit it or not, you see the way Kirby celebrates this game. He goes around with the visor. Again, he knows he's better than Florida, but this game means something because I think he only beat Florida once in his career. I think he's 1-3, just like Mike Bobo. Someone had to fact check me on Mike Bobo. But this means something to those guys. What's going to happen? I think Florida comes out and plays well again. I mean, will it be enough to win and probably save Billy Napier's job? No. Let's call a spade a spade. But I think this game going into the fourth quarter could be anywhere from a Georgia 6 to 13-point lead. And Florida's kind of hanging in there. A lot of this is because I just don't know what Georgia team we are going to see. I don't. I don't think DJ Lagway is going to do a lot against this defense. I'll say this. I trust the defense. While inconsistent at times, I think they can play well enough, show a lot to the true freshman DJ Lagway to win. But the offense for Georgia needs to get off to a good start and take some momentum early. At least if I'm Kirby Smart, that's what I want to see. Mike Bobo, Carson Beck executing at a high level right out of the gate. For Billy Napier, you're just hoping to have a chance in the fourth quarter, like I mentioned. But I think Georgia starts quick. Florida hangs in there. They throw their blows too. But the Georgia offense comes back to life just to be a little bit too much for Florida to start the fourth quarter. And again, they're playing better. Just they don't have the horses right now to hang for a 12-round fight or a fourth quarter battle with Georgia right now. Give me Georgia 34-20. I'm going to say I'm agreeing with my guy Joel Klatt here. I don't think Georgia covers. I don't ever think you're really like, man, Georgia's going to lose this game. But I think it's going to be something like 34-20, 34-13, something like that. That wouldn't shock me. And again, I know 34-13, that means Georgia would cover. But I'm going to go 34-20. Moving on. I mentioned we had a Gamecock fan in here earlier. Texas A&M at South Carolina, 7:30 p.m. Eastern on ABC. Texas A&M favored by 2.5. Point total for it's up to 3 now. Just looking at it. Yep, I have it on the banner. Point total down to 43.5 now. Setting the tone. Just to be clear, this is not a trap game for Texas A&M. This is going to be a tough SEC night game road environment, folks. Let's call it spade a spade. This is not a trap. South Carolina's a good football team. I had South Carolina going 4-8 in the season, in the regular season. They're better than I thought they would be, especially defensively. I thought defensive line would be good, not as good as they had been. And I had some concerns on the back end, but they're better than I thought they would be. Offense is about what I thought, though. But again, this is not a trap game. This is just a really tough night game off an emotional win last week against LSU. This is a buzzsaw type of environment they could be walking into Saturday night at Williams-Brice Stadium at Willie B. This may be even more of an impressive of a win for A&M if they get this one done. This may be even more impressive than beating LSU last week. If A&M wins this one, they have a straight shot to the playoffs. Essentially, as long as they don't drop one to New Mexico State or Auburn, they'd be in the playoffs. Even if they lose to Texas, their 2 losses would be to Notre Dame, who's probably going to get in the playoffs, and it would be Texas who would probably get in the playoffs at that point. They'd be in, just as long as you don't drop a game at Auburn. For Carolina, I think 8-9 wins is on the board there. Carolina could win every game left. This week, they could beat Vandy. They could beat Missouri at home. They should beat Wofford, and they could win at South Carolina. It's a big win for this big game for both teams. What's going to happen? Look, what I think happens and what I would do are just 2 completely different things, but I think A&M will follow this best path to victory here. Do not turn the ball over. I know that sounds simple, but Marcel Reed, I think, is going to get the start here, and I'm still open to pulling the Steve Spurrier. I know they're playing South Carolina, so South Carolina fans and Florida fans will be familiar with this. Steve Spurrier played the hot hand. He wasn't afraid to pull people. I think you kind of have that advantage if you're A&M this year. Do I ultimately think you can go win an SEC championship, national championship playing like this? No, but I think it gives you the best chance. And Mike Elko has pushed all the right buttons so far in regard to quarterback play. Marcel Reed, 0 turnovers so far through 3.5 starts, if you're counting a half of that A&M one. Even if it's ugly early, I think you got to stay patient with the game plan here. Just, hey, we're not going to be put in any bad situations. We may get stopped the first 2 or 3 series, guys. It's at their place. It's going to be hostile. They're good on defense. You have to stay patient. I think you got to echo that to your players and staff member if you're Mike Elko. I think if A&M doesn't commit 2+ turnovers, they'll win this game. That is how an opportunistic South Carolina defense has been playing well. I mean, go watch the Oklahoma game. That game was over with the 10-minute mark in the first half. Excuse me. After the 3 turnovers and 2 of them being for touchdowns. The environment's going to be rocking. Need a big win at home. I think Carolina gets up early, probably 7-0. And I think we have something like a 10-7, 14-10 type halftime game. I mean, listen to Money Making Weekend. I'll have some bets on this one. But I think Carolina has a back-breaking turnover by something like Robbie Ashford fumble in exchange or a muff punt. Something happens. So I think the longer you wait and just don't give South Carolina turnovers, they're going to – I think offensively they can't go through a game without making a mistake. If I'm Mike Elko, I'm really conservative in this one, and I take my shots off play action. Because I do think Marcel Reed, as he only passed 2 times last week, I think if he can get that shot, you saw right up that middle over cover 3, just dropped it into Noah Thomas. It was a hell of a ball. I don't know. If A&M follows my game plan, does not turn it over 2 or more times, I think they get out of there with a win because I think they're the better team. I give them the coaching advantage. Mike Elko, Jay Bateman over Dow Loggins. Yes. Shane Beamer, Mike Elko, Mike Elko. Again, if you're Shane Beamer in South Carolina, don't come put your team in bad situations. Don't come fake a punt early in the first half like you did against Ole Miss out of a bye week. If I'm South Carolina, I don't want to do that. Let's just see if they can beat us. I think both teams are just kind of going to throw body shots and just kind of be, hey, somebody going to really take that haymaker and leave themselves exposed and open? I don't know. If I'm A&M, I trust my defense more because your defensive line should have a field day against this offensive line for South Carolina. And same could be said, especially with Chase Basantis being out for Texas A&M. South Carolina's defensive line with Kyle Kennard, if Dylan Stewart continues to grow up, Tonka Hemingway, Alex Huntley, they're playing really well. So we'll see. I just think A&M gets the win, 20-17. And this would be a program-defining win because this is a game typically A&M would go lose the next week on the road. And again, this isn't a trap game, folks. This is just a tough-ass SEC road game a week after a big game you hosted at home against LSU. Give me Texas A&M 20-17. Next, Kentucky at Tennessee. Tennessee Favored by 17.5, point total 14.5. Game 7:45 p.m. Eastern on the SEC Network. Setting the tone. That Alabama game for Tennessee feels like a lifetime ago, doesn't it? It just really does. I mean, they've been off. It feels like Georgia played Texas a long time ago for whatever reason. It feels like these teams that are coming off the bye week and playing this week, it's like, oh, welcome back to the party. Didn't forget about you, but it's like, man, it feels like I hadn't seen you play in a while. But Tennessee is a championship defense, folks. Let's call a spade a spade. The thing I am waiting to see is if Nico Iamaleava can become more consistent and start being that guy towards the end of the year that is winning football games for them. Does this bye week do him any good? The plays are there. Josh Heupel is scripting it up perfectly. He's just got to put the cap on top of it. For Kentucky, I think they quit, honestly. This team never came back from Oxford. They never got off that bus or plane, whatever way you want to say it. Brutal last 3 games that were all winnable. You got Vandy in a perfect spot. You're facing a true freshman in his second start, really first start against a decent team if you don't include Samford for DJ Lagway. And you lose to Auburn last week, give them their first SEC win. Mark Stoops is complaining about night games right now. I mean, what makes me have any confidence in Kentucky to win this football game? But what's going to happen, folks? I'm not saying Kentucky doesn't come out of the gate and play well. I'm not going to say Tennessee just roll with the balls out and beats them bad. I think Deion Walker, guys like that, play well in this money-type game against other good competition. He's not going to go play well against mediocre to bad teams like Vanderbilt, Florida, or even Auburn. The big games for Deion Walker are these kind of games. Now, if Nico is struggling, it wouldn't shock me if this game was close at half. However, with another inconsistent game from Nico, Tennessee should be able to win this game by double digits, even if he's missing some like he has been. From a betting standpoint, I lean Tennessee to cover, and we'll talk about that here in a minute. But 17, it's a lot. Nico Iamaleava, remember, folks, he's the key to this one. Kentucky won't do much, if anything, on that Tennessee defense. But with that being said, I think Tennessee wins this one 34-10. I don't see Kentucky scoring more than 14 points. I mean, who do they go with? Gavin Wimsatt, Brock Vandegrift. Again, I think this team is kind of quit. Wouldn't shock me if they come out and play well defensively for about a half. I just think Tennessee will be too much for them. It wouldn't shock me if Tennessee scores on defense. Kentucky cannot score enough to beat Tennessee, even in Lexington right now with this Tennessee defense, but much less in Neyland and Knoxville at night. Give me Tennessee in the all-black unis, 34-10. I mentioned some other games across the league. Maine at Oklahoma. There's not even a line for this, but 2:30 p.m. Eastern, ESPN Plus, SEC Network Plus. Oklahoma's got to get the offensive line figured out, folks. I mean, 10 sacks last week against Ole Miss, and a lot of it in the fourth quarter when Jacob Sexton in the second half went out. This is one to keep in mind. Oklahoma must win here. What will even the crowd be like for that? UMass at Mississippi State. Mississippi State's favored by 18, 60.5 right now. This game is at 4:15 p.m. Eastern on the SEC Network. I mean, must win for Jeff Lebby. You're probably only going to get maybe 3-4 wins in total this year. I mean, this is one you got to get. I actually like Mississippi State in the 18 here. And really, I have another bet for you, first quarter bet there. I think Mississippi State puts up a lot of points here. I think Jeff Lebby is well aware enough, smart enough guy. Again, like I mentioned, you got to be covering these games against Texas, Georgia. I mean, you didn't against Arkansas last week. Texas A&M. You got to be playing well in those games. You don't have to win. Your fan base doesn't expect you to win. But these games against UMass at home, you have to win. People will be like, we're losing SEC games. I mean, granted, Toledo losing 41-10 at home to them doesn't go well. You lose to UMass in the same year as Toledo, it's not going to be good. Must have. I don't think they're going to lose. You're favored by 18. I think Mississippi State will do what they want offensively here. College football playoff picture, folks. I just wanted to go over it a little bit, break it down by conference, and I'm going to give you who I think will be the 12 teams as we stand on October 31st. It probably, when we get to this, around 8:45 as we sit here at 8:39. Let's just start off with the Big Ten right now. 4 teams that I think are still in the college football playoff race. I'm just going to go through the Big Ten, ACC, Big 12, SEC, Independent, and the Group of 5. The teams that are still in the playoff line. I calculate it's probably about 20 teams fighting for 12 spots. Remember that, guys. 20 teams fighting for 12 spots. Let's get to it. The Big Ten. I think 4 teams. I think you got Oregon sitting at 8-0 right now. Kind of the leader to go win the Big Ten right now. I think schedule's very manageable. Penn State sitting at 7-0. Have a massive win at home this week against Ohio State. Indiana sitting at 7-0. Then they got a tricky one in East Lansing against Michigan State this week. They play Michigan at home. And they got a matchup against Ohio State down the road. Ohio State coming in at 6-1. That one loss at the end in Autzen to Oregon. They got a big one against Penn State. If they were to lose, I don't know. They have to win out. I mean, I do think they're better than Indiana, better than Michigan. They probably still win out. I just think your Big Ten title race is out at that point if you lose this week to Penn State. But those are the 4 teams of the Big Ten to just continue to keep an eye on. Oregon, Penn State, Indiana, Ohio State. ACC, I think it's 4 teams too. Miami, 8-0. And what's your biggest win if you're Miami right now? I mean, what's probably your biggest win right now? Louisville, Virginia Tech, at Florida. Not a lot of great wins, but they're 8-0. Clemson, 6-1. I think they're the best team in the ACC right now. I mean, I'll go ahead and say it. Don't want to root for it. I think they're the ACC rep right now. I think we're going to get Miami, Clemson. You got Pittsburgh coming in at 7-0. Pitt has a big one this week. Pitt and SMU, who actually happens to be next, who pulled up Pitt's schedule here for us so we can talk about it. But Pitt coming in, they play SMU this week. Randomly enough, massive game. But it's on the ACC network late on a Saturday. I mean, it's a playoff game. I mean, it's playoff contending games. But no, I mean, Pitt's 8-0. Best win is probably Cincinnati, 28-27 to open up the year. Cal's not a bad one either. They beat Syracuse on Thursday, but they get SMU in Dallas this week, then Virginia. Then they play Clemson in 2 weeks, Louisville and BC. So they have some very losable games. But they are undefeated as we speak right now. So you have to talk about Pat Narduzzi and his team. SMU 7-1, the 1 loss to one of the Big 12 leaders who we'll talk about here in just a minute, BYU a couple weeks ago. But I think this Pittsburgh-SMU game, not officially elimination game, but, well, if SMU loses, that'd be their second loss. Yeah, they're out. Pittsburgh just kind of feels like they're going to have to run the table and maybe have their only loss. Maybe not. No, that's not fair. Not run the table. If they can't – I don't think they can lose this game because I think they're probably going to lose to Clemson. Still got some tough games Pitt does against – I mean, Boston College end of the year is tough. Louisville, I mean – yeah, I mean, again, that Clemson game in 2 weeks at home. I think this is a must-win for Pittsburgh. This is essentially an elimination game, not mathematically, but for the ACC race there. So that's 4 teams still competing in the ACC. Remember, guys, 20 teams fighting for 12 spots here. You got 4 from the Big Ten so far, 4 from the ACC. Moving to the Big 12, I think you got 3 teams. Some may say Colorado. They already have 2 losses. I think some chaos would have to happen. 3 teams, though, BYU 8-0 undefeated. They just kind of remind me of Joe Platt said it, a TCU-type team. It's just kind of a team of destiny. Iowa State 7-1. But Iowa State, I'm pulling it up right now. Iowa State has some tough games left. Them in K-State, that last game of the regular season will probably be the matchup of who goes and plays BYU in Arlington for the Big 12 title game. I mean, so they got Texas Tech this week at Kansas, Cincinnati, who's good, at Utah and Kansas State. It would shock me if Iowa State finished the year 12-0. Wouldn't shock me if they're playing in Arlington and they're 11-1, but it'd shock me if they're 12-0. See, and I think from this perspective, I think BYU has a really good shot of winning out, if I'm being completely honest. Watch, I'm pulling up their schedule. So if BYU to me, I mean, they're already undefeated. So they play Utah at home, at Utah, the Holy War. That'll be big. Kansas at home, at Arizona State, and not a very good Houston team. Good chance they run the table. They just kind of have that feel to them. Again, I thought Joel Klatt made a great point. Very similar to that 2022 TCU team, just finding ways to win. And that SMU game to open up the year, week 2, competing for an ACC title on the road, that helps them that win. They've already beaten K-State. I mean, Oklahoma State's faded. Yeah, I don't know. It just kind of seems like they'll be that team this year. Who else you got here in the Big 12? Iowa State, I mentioned him. And then K-State sitting there at 7-1. With teams they can kind of knock out. I mean, K-State still got at Houston. They should win. I think Arizona State at home. That'll be a tough trip for Kenny Dillingham and them. Cincinnati at home. Cincinnati's a good team. But I think I like K-State at home. And then at Iowa State, I'm telling you, November 30th, K-State at Iowa State. I think the winner of that goes and plays BYU for the Big 12 title in Arlington. That's my prediction. That last game of the regular season, that'll be how the Big 12 shakes out. But that's 3 teams from the Big 12. From the SEC, you got 7, I think. I think you got A&M sitting there at 6-1. Georgia sitting there at 6-1. Texas sitting there at 7-1. LSU at 6-2. Alabama at 6-2. Excuse me, and Ole Miss at 6-2. I mean, Missouri's in the same boat, but 10-2. Missouri's not going to have that quality win because you have Oklahoma's not going to give you a lot of juice. Mississippi State's not going to give you a lot of juice. Arkansas's not going to give you a lot of juice. There's not a lot of juice. They had to beat Alabama last week. And unfortunately, I don't think they would have won anyways, but they're playing with one hand tied behind their back without Brady Cook or a healthy Brady Cook. I mean, the SEC, they got the most teams still left fighting for this. I mean, I think if A&M wins this week, I feel pretty good about them unless they drop one at Auburn. Georgia, I think, is probably going to be there. I just want to see do they come out and look good this week. They need to be starting hitting their stride coming off this bye week. Texas, I think, is a very manageable schedule with Florida, Kentucky still on the schedule. At Arkansas is tricky. Then obviously the trip to Kyle Field, that could be for an SEC championship playoff spot. LSU, Alabama next week, that's a playoff elimination game, guys. Both sit at 6-2. Loser would have their third loss. Next week in Baton Rouge, Saturday night, that is a playoff game. That's a playoff game. Loser's out. Loser's out. So you can take one of them out. Then Ole Miss has to win out. Have a trip at Arkansas, and they host Georgia next week. Even at 10-2, now you'd have a Georgia win. But again, we'll talk about this with the playoffs. It'll be interesting, some of these 10-2 teams. And then I think you got to throw what I'm saying. You got to throw Tennessee in there too. Tennessee sitting in there at the same spot as well. I don't know how you could not put Tennessee in there. Tennessee coming in with only one loss as well. So that goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 teams. And Tennessee comes in right at that. Right now, what's the Tennessee win total? I know they only have one loss, but what's the win total right there? So I can just put it up there. 6-1. That's what I thought. I didn't. They were 5-1, 6-1 across the board there. So I think you got 7 SEC teams right there, like sitting right there in a spot where it's Texas A&M, Georgia, Texas, Tennessee, LSU, Alabama, and Ole Miss all sitting there. And again, you can take LSU or Alabama out after next week because that'll be their third loss. I mean, I think Tennessee, I feel pretty confident predicting the rest of their season. I think they'll beat Kentucky, beat Mississippi State, probably lose to Georgia on the road, beat UTEP, beat Vandy on the road. I think they're going to be 10-2. It's just, we'll talk about Tennessee, but just what if they lose to Georgia, the best win they have all year is Alabama. Then say Alabama loses to LSU and it's just a 9-3 Alabama team, and your best win is a 9-3 Alabama team at home, and you didn't even play that well. I don't know. Hey, how are you going to be compared to 11-1 Indiana potentially? Hey, that's what you got to kind of start discussing a little bit. What if Pitt goes off and goes like an 11-1? There's like Tennessee wouldn't have some phenomenal wins. NC State's kind of flamed out for you. It just wasn't overly tough. Like, they need to be cheering for Alabama to kind of be like, yeah, keep winning, Alabama, and we're going to get in ahead of you if we have the same record because we beat you head-to-head. But we need that win. We need you to be 10-2, Alabama. We need you to be 10-2. If you're a Tennessee fan, I know it's tough, but you got to be cheering for Alabama. You don't want your best win to be 9-3, and then just say you get blown out in Athens. I'm not saying that's happening. I'm just hypothetically for conversation purposes saying that. But yeah, for whatever reason, I had Tennessee on here, and I didn't initially mention them, but yeah, no way Jose, you couldn't mention them in there. So you got what, 4 6-1 teams: Texas A&M, Georgia, Texas, and Tennessee. Then you got your 3 2-loss teams: LSU, Alabama, and Ole Miss. And remember, LSU, Alabama next week, elimination game. So you could cut 2 out of the 3. You could cut 2 teams here in the next 2 weeks. Obviously, you'll cut LSU or Alabama, and then if Ole Miss loses to Arkansas or Georgia, they'll be out. Let's go to some comments here. Byron P. Browning, the SEC perception is there's no good schools outside the SEC. Same logic applies to who they date. They don't think anything exists outside their own gene pool. SEC logic equals SEC in breeding. Don't really get that one, Michael. Ons the Gray. Fellas here, I have to catch up in the morning, brother. See you Monday. Brian P's back, maybe. Maybe when they stop. This guy's a clown. But anyway, so I think it's 7 teams fighting for that. From a G5 perspective, Boise State comes in at 6-1. Their sole loss, a 1-possession game to Oregon. Then Army's at 7-0. But Army has a matchup against the next team we'll talk about, Independent Notre Dame, sitting at 7-1 with a win on the road against the SEC leading Texas A&M Aggies. You know the Irish fans are cheering for A&M still. You know the Irish fans are cheering for Texas A&M. Schedule very manageable down the stretch. I mean, Army and USC are their toughest games left. I mean, they got Florida. They're in a bye. They got Florida State. They'll beat Virginia. They should at least. Wait, crazy college football season. Who knows? Then Army at Yankee Stadium. I don't know. Al Golden's kind of that X factor this year. Defense coordinator, my former boss when I worked at Miami in football there in 2013 and 14. So I think he does a phenomenal job scheming up for him. That's why I kind of like Notre Dame to ultimately make the playoff. I mean, I think Notre Dame's going to finish 11-1. I think they beat Army and Southern Cal. I think they match up great against Southern Cal. And again, I think Al Golden is that X factor this year. So let's get to it. College football playoffs. I'm going to start with one. I'm going to go with the Big Ten champ. As we stand right now, October 31st, 2024, here are the playoff predictions, how I think things will shake out. I think Oregon's going to be your Big Ten champ. I think they're going to go undefeated. I think right now Ohio State has a lot of holes. I think Oregon would beat them again right now. As we stand on October 31st, it's not counting what happens this week. It's just as we stand. So I think they're your Big Ten champ. I think Georgia would be your SEC champ right now. I think they're going to come in at 2. I think they run the table. I mentioned it earlier. I think Clemson's the best team in the ACC right now. I think they'll get that automatic bid from the ACC. And I think BYU, I mentioned it. Just kind of that TCU feel, like Joel Klatt said. Just kind of feel like the team you're just, oh, they're going to lose. They're going to lose. I think their schedule's manageable down the stretch. And then just one game against either. Remember, I think the Big 12 title game is going to come down to that winner in Ames against Iowa State and K-State. Watch out for K-State. They're sneaky. Could get that automatic bid. But give me the Cougars right now. At number 5, I don't really feel great about this. I could see them potentially losing this week. It just who plays quarterback for Penn State. I don't know. I mean, Denzel Burkett having a great year. The JT Tuimoloau hasn't played well. Like, I don't know. Ohio State's defense has let me down. Do I trust them to win out? I don't know. I'm just going to put them here, though, because I think on paper, I like them a lot. I'm just giving Chip Kelly and Jim Knowles the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to go 5 here. Let's say they're the second team from the Big Ten. Don't feel overly confident. I think that maybe could be Penn State, but I'm going to go Ohio State here. Number 6, here's the second SEC representative here, the Texas Longhorns coming in. I think Texas wins out as we stand right now. I think they win out. That's my prediction right now. It could easily change. I just think they win out. They're on a bye week this week. Yes, that does mean I think they win in Kyle Field, folks. People were asking. Just mentioned them. Number 7, this is the second rep or the third rep from the Big Ten, Penn State. I think they could legitimately win this week in Happy Valley. But I think Penn State's going to get in. I think this would be their only loss because you got to look. Penn State's schedule. Just want to make sure I'm right on it here. Penn State's schedule. I mean, let's just say they win this week. They get Washington at home, at Purdue, at Minnesota, and Maryland. They're not losing 2 out of those last 4. Even if they lose this week, I don't think they're going to lose they have to lose 3 of the last 4 probably if they beat Ohio State. Let's say even if they lose, I don't think they lose 2 more games out of Washington, Purdue, at Minnesota, and Maryland. So I think Penn State's in. Number 8, Notre Dame. I think they're going to go 11-1. Only lost to Northern Illinois in week 2, and they have a massive win over a top 4 SEC team on the road. Has it been pretty? No. Any season you lose at Northern Illinois, you can't make. It's been pretty gravy across the board, folks. No, it hadn't. But it's 11-1. Schedule hadn't been great, but again, I think they match up well against Army. I think they match up well against USC. 11-1 Notre Dame's getting in as they should. They'll be in at 8. Speaking of the Devils, here they are. Number 9, Texas A&M. I think you got to give Notre Dame the nod over A&M in seeding just because of the head-to-head. And I know that was week 1. That was months ago. But still, I think A&M's going to – I have them winning this week. So I have them. I think they're going to lose to Texas, finish 10-2, but I think they will get in to the college football playoff. And here's where we start to get a little dicey here. Here's where we start to talk a little. You could maybe even throw A&M in this a little bit. But, I mean, kind of the teams on the fringe here, like LSU 10-2, because I think they're going to beat Alabama next week. 11-1 Indiana. Iowa State, let's say they're 10-2. What if Miami slips up before the ACC championship game, and then they lose to Clemson and they're 11-2? You got to remember we have a group of 5 rep we still got to add here at the end. But coming in at number 10, I think they give the nod to Tennessee right now. I think they give the nod to Tennessee. And again, I mean, I have Alabama going 9-3 according to this, so that's their best win. I mean, you're probably sitting there. LSU's best win at that point, if they finish 10-2, is Alabama as well. So Tennessee and LSU would have the same best win. I think right now they're probably going to look and be like, Tennessee's got a better unit on the defensive side of the ball. We're going to give them the nod. I think Tennessee right now would get the nod over LSU. That may change. I just think Tennessee would come in a little bit before LSU. I think number 11. I think Miami, I think they would give them the benefit of the doubt. Again, I mean, what's Miami's best win this year? I mean, I'm being serious. Well, what is their best win? I mean, I think you got to look at, I mean, at Florida, Virginia Tech, that you won in a close game, maybe at Cal, at Louisville. I mean, not a lot of phenomenal wins. I mean, you got Duke this week. You got at Georgia Tech, Wake Forest, and at Syracuse. There won't be a lot of phenomenal wins, but I still think you got to put them in there. Like I'd have them right now probably going 12-1 with a loss to Clemson. So I think they're in. Then I think the group of 5 rep, just like a lot of people have, Boise State. I mean, I think the only other group of 5 rep you could really talk about, I guess, would be, Army. If Army were to win out, beat Notre Dame, I know they're sitting at 7-0, but I'm going to go Boise State right now. So I think they get in. Ashton Genty and the boys. They look a pretty solid team. Their first game would be at Ohio State, so that would be interesting. Week 1, but just rolling through it again, guys. This is as of today, as of this moment, in October 31st, 2024, Halloween night, for Pete's sake, at 8:55. These are the 12 teams I got in. Let's roll through it again. Oregon, Big Ten champ, coming at number 1. I think they're going to be undefeated, the sole undefeated team. Georgia, the SEC champ, coming at number 2. Clemson, the ACC champ, coming at 3. Just think it's BYU's year. I think they're the Big 12 reps. So those are your 4 buys. Ohio State sitting there at number 5. Don't feel great about that. I don't have a lot of trust in them right now. I just think they're the best, the most talented team in the Big Ten. I'm going to give them the win over Penn State until I see it, but I don't feel great about it this year, and I usually feel really good about Ohio State beating James Franklin and Penn State. Number 6, SEC, Texas coming over. I think they finish 11-1, lose to Georgia twice to finish 11-2. Penn State, I think their only loss is going to be Ohio State. I think they're in. Notre Dame, again, 11-1, won at Texas A&M. I think they beat Army and USC to go 11-1. A&M finished 10-2, losses to Texas and Notre Dame, 2 playoff teams. I think they're going to get in. You got to give Notre Dame the edge in the seeding, though. That's why Notre Dame's 8, A&M's 9. Tennessee, I think it's going to be a Tennessee, LSU, potentially a 2-loss Iowa State conversation. Those are the matchups. Depending on what Pitt, maybe SMU does, you can throw them in there as well. Maybe K-State, I don't know. It just depends. I think that in my scenario, if LSU were to beat Alabama and finish 10-2, and Tennessee wins out, beats Kentucky, beats Mississippi State, beats UTEP, beats Vanderbilt, and their only losses to Georgia. And Tennessee's 2 losses are to Arkansas on the road and at Georgia, 2 road losses. But your best wins Alabama. LSU, your 2 losses would be USC week 1 and then at A&M, and your best wins Alabama and then Ole Miss. I think by season's end, I think a lot about how it's going to look. I just think right now, when I'm watching it with my eyes, I think Tennessee's really good on defense. So I think with it splitting hairs here, I'm going to give them the nod because they both have a very similar type best win. You could even probably make the case LSU has the second best win. They have the other better win with Ole Miss at home. Because, just LSU's schedule's been a little more difficult. But I think you watch them. I don't know now. If Alabama were to win that game next week, which I wouldn't be shocked, I don't know if Alabama's disciplined enough to go win in Baton Rouge. That would change it up a lot there. I think Tennessee would move up in seeding because you'd have to give them the head-to-head if them and Alabama both finished 10-2 with Tennessee beating Alabama 2 weeks ago. That would obviously knock LSU out. Remember, folks, LSU, Alabama next week, both coming in with 2 losses, elimination game. One of them will be done unless pure chaos happens and 3 loss teams get in. Miami, the second ACC rep, gets in there at 11. And then the group of 5 rep at Boise. So your first round matchups would be Boise at Ohio State, Miami at Texas, Tennessee at Penn State in December. That'd be wild. Be a lot of white. Tennessee wear those white unis and maybe snow in. Penn State's got the white helmets. That'd be a lot of white, folks. It'd be a cool game, though. And then Texas A&M would travel to Notre Dame. That'd be a fun one, too. And then remember the 4 buys would be Oregon is the Big Ten champ, Georgia is the SEC champ, Clemson is the ACC champ, and BYU as the Big 12 champ. Mr. Bucknuts, I'll be back once the Bucks win the Big Ten. Yeah, maybe that may happen. I just don't know. Offensive lines really worrying me right now, Mr. Nuts. And then I don't think Denzel Burke's playing that well so far. The defense, man, I don't know. I want to be wrong. I want to be wrong. But I got you at 5. So, I don't know how upset you can be at me having – if you're watching the same games as me, be upset about you finishing second in the Big Ten after almost losing to Nebraska last week. Miami whoops Texas. Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. A&M and Georgia in the SEC championship game. Could easily happen, too. Appreciate you listening, Mr. Bucknuts. Miami beats SMU in ACC championship game. That'd be wild, huh? So you got Clemson losing what? To Pitt? Down the stretch, let's pull up Clemson just for conversation purposes. I just want to be right on this. That'd be wild if you had that, Mr. Bucknuts. If SMU made it all the way there. Yeah, Clemson's got Louisville, at Virginia Tech, at Pitt. So, they got 3 losable conference games on a given day. Definitely Louisville, at Virginia, at Pitt. Yeah, Yeah, crazier things have happened there, Mr. Bucknuts. Liberty, Joe K says his group of 5 rep. Mr. Bucknut, Clemson's are fraud. Could end up being. You're right. They played a lot of great teams. Could be true. Some tough tests coming up, and they got South Carolina at the end of the year. No Indiana. They only dropped 1 to the Buckeyes. Mr. Bucknuts, I don't, man. I don't. I mean, what's their best win? And I'm glad you brought this up, Mr. Bucknuts. I mean, I was even comparing it today. I was looking at it when I was prepping for it this morning before my staff meeting. Let's just say it's Alabama. Right now, Alabama has only played 1 team with a losing record, and that's South Florida. Indiana has only played 1 team with a winning record, and I believe that's Nebraska at 5-3. Indiana's schedule's not tough, guys. I think this week at East Lansing could be tricky. I'm going to take Michigan State probably in the points, but I think Indiana wins outright. Michigan, just okay this year, not great. At Ohio State, let's say they lose that, and then Purdue's terrible. What is your best win if your only loss is against Ohio State? Michigan, and then Nebraska? I mean, if Alabama goes 10-2, they'd have wins at LSU and Georgia at home. South Carolina's looking better and better each week. I mean, the Vanderbilt loss that looked terrible. I mean, I don't know how you wouldn't put a 10-2 Alabama team in with that. Again, let me mention, as we stand right now, folks, Alabama has only played 1 team with an overall losing record right now. That's South Florida. Indiana has only played 1 team with a winning record right now, and that's Nebraska. We're comparing apples and oranges. I think Tennessee and LSU should get in before Notre Dame too. Before Indiana. If it's 10-2 Alabama, 10-2 Tennessee, 10-2 LSU, even Ole Miss 10-2 with a win over Georgia. Now, I wouldn't put an 11-1. I would not put a 10-2 Missouri, who I think should definitely be out over an 11-1 Indiana. I'm not saying that. I just think if it's Alabama, LSU, Ole Miss, or Tennessee, they should get 10-2. They would have 2 better wins than Indiana and a much tougher strength of schedule, guys. I hate to be like that. I think Indiana doesn't have a path to the playoff unless they win out. Call me crazy. They have to win out to get in the college football playoff. Don't come in here with the bull crap out brands. Go look at the freaking schedules if you want to be honest. And I have buddies who work at Indiana. Remember, people are new to the show. Dave talks ball, one of the lead football analysts here on SEC Unfiltered, lead basketball analyst. I worked in college football for 9 years. Worked at Alabama, worked at Georgia, Texas A&M, Auburn. I have buddies all over the college football landscape. And they don't take personally this. I would tell my buddies. I could call them right now at Indiana and be like, I don't think you should get in an 11-1 with your schedule. I think Indiana has to win out. I just think it's fair. It's not branding. And if you want to be completely honest, yeah, college football is a big business. They probably would give Alabama, Tennessee, LSU the nod over Indiana from a brand standpoint. But I don't think that's the reason why if it came down to, like, they were literally similar resumes, but they're not even similar. Again, Alabama so far has played 1 team with a losing record. Indiana has only played 1 team with a winning record. Let that sink in, folks. And I'm not saying Alabama's getting the playoffs. I don't have them getting into the playoffs. I have them losing to LSU next week. But the same argument goes for LSU, Tennessee, and Ole Miss if they all go 10-2 too. Tennessee ain't getting in. I mean, it depends on what happens. If they finish 10-2 losses to Georgia, if they're 10-2 with losses to Georgia and Arkansas, their best wins Alabama at home, and Alabama's 9-3, you're right. You're getting in some uncharted waters where you're very uncomfortable with your wins. But I will still say that win against Alabama is better than anything Indiana has. I mean, I'm just saying it is. And they don't really have a bad loss. That Arkansas is not bad. Arkansas is probably going to definitely win 6 games, if not 7 or 8, depending on what they do against Ole Miss. Then obviously at Georgia's nothing to hang your head to be upset about. That's what I'm saying. Like, again, I'm with you. Tennessee would probably be the team they have the biggest argument against because LSU would have wins over Ole Miss and Alabama. Tennessee's waiting for that second best big win. I agree with you, Bucknuts. But I'll ask you this. If you're Ohio State guy, who would you rather play? Again, I don't think you pick by that, but I'm just saying if you're Ryan Day, Chip Kelly, Jim Knowles, they'd rather play Indiana. And I'm not saying you go by that. I just think Tennessee would have the better win than Indiana. Beating Alabama is a better win than beating Michigan. Both of them at home, too. So, just one more time, going through the playoffs. My predicted playoffs as of now, Oregon 1, the Big Ten champ. Georgia 2, SEC champ. Clemson number 3 is the ACC champ. BYU, the Big 12 champ. Ohio State coming up number 2 in the Big 10 at number 5. Texas is the 6th seed. Penn State is the 7th seed. Notre Dame is the 8th seed. A&M 9. Tennessee 10. Miami 11. And I think Boise State 12. You could maybe even switch up Miami and Tennessee at 11 or 12. Imagine you could have Tennessee, Texas that first week. I think you're splitting hairs. I do agree with Bucknuts from that perspective. I do think Tennessee's that interesting 10-2 team from the SEC because you only have one real win. And if Alabama's 9-3, it's good, but it's not some exceptional win like Alabama or LSU would have, like Alabama or Ole Miss would have, especially Alabama with already beating Georgia. And if they finish 10-2, a win at LSU. I think Alabama's in if they go 10-2, folks. I mean, Alabama would have a legit – I mean, I know Bama lost to Tennessee, but Alabama would have a better resume than Tennessee. They would. I mean, let's call a spade a spade. Joe K, go Gamecocks, go Razorbacks. Looking forward to Monday night. Texas versus Ohio State in the Vegas Open. You're right. That's the best SEC matchup of the season in Vegas. Got to get Trey Johnson going there, Joe K. I think you're going to like Tremont Mark, the Houston, Arkansas transfer, and then Arthur Kaluma coming over for K-State. And then next, guys, finally, before we get you out of here, money making weekend. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 bets for you. A couple from the same game, but we got a trend. We did that with the Notre Dame game last week. What other game? But we're up to 44% there. My promise to you, remember, 55% is where we're going to be at the end of the year. We got a long way to go, guys. It sounds like we're almost there at week 10. We got national championships January 19th, folks. Let's get it going. Over 47.5 Ohio State, Penn State. I just think this game goes over. I think it's just one of those weird games. It goes over. I think Andy Kotelnicki will be in his bag. The OC at Penn State, at Caver from Kansas. I think Ryan Day is going to be in his bag, him and Chip Kelly. This could be a higher scoring game. Give me the over 47.5. Bucknuts, this must be for you. My first few Big Ten games right after that. Give me Michigan. Give me the Michigan Wolverines, folks, plus 14.5 against Oregon. Just the way the college football season at home at the Big House, it's just been really weird this year. Oregon's due to not to go play great. They're not losing this game. I just think Michigan covers 14.5 at home. It's just that it's so week to week. I don't really have anything to back this up. It's just a feel. Cross-country road trip. These Big Ten teams have been going East Coast, West Coast, Midwest. I just think this is a game that's going to be close. Michigan getting 14.5. We're all kind of down on them. Maybe this is a game that could really help Indiana. We're talking about Indiana getting in. Michigan can go play Oregon down the wire. That would help. South Carolina team total under 22.5. Give me that against a relentless A&M defense. Think could be up there for the top defense in the league. Them in Tennessee right now. A lot of good defensive fronts in the SEC this year. 22.5 point total for South Carolina. I like a lot. Carolina gives up a ton of sacks. A&M had success against LSU last week against probably the best pass blocking offensive line in the country. I like A&M to hold them under 22.5. Then another South Carolina A&M one. First half under. The point total for both teams under. First half, 21.5. Give it to me. Both these defenses are really good. I don't see a lot of points early. I think there's going to be conservative play calling. I think both teams are going to stare at each other and make who blinks first with the turnover. I think under 21.5 first half points. Auburn, minus 6.5. I'm telling you, Vegas has me, folks. Vegas has me thinking, believing in Auburn this week. That win against Kentucky is going to get them going. I think Diego Pavia is hurt. I think he's hurt. Vandy may be hitting that wall. I know if they win, they go to a bowl game. Y'all heard my prediction earlier, though. I got Auburn winning this 28-20. I think they cover. Give me 6.5. I'll lay with 6.5. Michigan State, another Big Ten one for you, Bucknuts. Michigan State plus 4.5 in the first half against your Hoosiers. Against Indiana, Michigan State plus 4.5 in the first half against Indiana. Just another gut feel. I think, and again, I like Indiana. I think it's just one of those things they're due not to go play well. And I also think Coach Smith's team at Michigan State's playing well each week. They're getting better. I think they're getting better each week with this team. So I think this could be interesting. I think with Jonathan Smith in this game could be interesting. So give me Michigan State coming out of the gate hot at home against Indiana, plus 4.5 in the first half. Mississippi State, first half, this is random, over team total 20.5 against UMass. I think Jeff Lebby and then come out early in that first half. I think they're going to have no problem scoring. I think they score over 20.5 in the first half. Give me the Bulldogs. Tennessee, Kentucky, under team total, or not team total, game total, 45.5. I mean, even with, let's say Tennessee wins 42-3, still cover. by half a point. I mean, Tennessee could go blow the doors off Kentucky and this still go under, guys, because I don't think Kentucky's going to score a lot. And Nico's inconsistency still lingers against a Kentucky defense. Mark Stoops and Brad White, it would not shock me because it's a money game. Like I mentioned, the guys like Deion Walker come out and play these games. I could potentially see them give Tennessee trouble early in the first half. Give me the Tennessee-Kentucky under 45.5. And here's another one coming right back at you, Tennessee fans. Give me Tennessee to cover the minus 16.5. I think Kentucky's quit. They're checked out. Doesn't mean they won't play well somewhat for the first half, but there'll be something that breaks the camel's back, and they just fall apart. This team has not been back since the Ole Miss win. I think Tennessee ultimately kind of is that boa constrictor this week and just kind of suffocates Kentucky. I like Tennessee to cover this 16.5. So just rehashing the bets, guys. Over 47.5 in the Ohio State-Penn State game. Michigan plus 14.5 against Oregon at home. South Carolina team total under 22.5 against A&M. First half under in that same game. South Carolina, Texas A&M 21.5. Auburn minus 6.5 versus Vanderbilt. Michigan State holding strong, coming out of the gates hot against Indiana, and Curtis Rourke, who's going to start that game, plus 4.5 in the first half for the Spartans. Mississippi State first half team total over 20.5 points. Tennessee, Kentucky for the game under 40.5. Tennessee minus 16.5. So there's 9 winners. Again, my promise to you, getting to the 14.5 or 55% for the season. But Mr. Bucknut's going under there. $24-20. I can see that too, if I'm being honest with you. I just, for whatever reason, I think Kotelnicki he's the best OC I think they've had under James Franklin. I think he has some things in his bag against Jim Knowles and then this week. Unless the Ohio State defense gets better, they have not shown up ever since I've gone back and watched him on film, Bucknuts. Like, what's Denzel Burke doing this year, man? All these draft pundits have these big-time guys for Ohio State, like, going first round of the NFL draft. And I know it's not a deep class. Most scouts I talk to for like after the 10th spot, it's really open, dude. But again, I mean, what's my guy? Jack Sawyer hadn't been doing what I think he's supposed to be doing. JT Tumaloa has not been great. And like I mentioned, Denzel Burke, not picking on him, but I don't know. I expect a little more out of them each week, and I just haven't. But it wouldn't shock me if I'm with you. I mean, you got it right under me too, 44. I have it hitting over 48, I guess. So we're within the same. Wouldn't shock me. But guys, I appreciate you joining me on this episode of Dave Talks Ball. We covered a lot. I went over my SEC basketball predictions for you there, 1 through 16. Go check out the video. I linked the 2024-2025 SEC basketball preview myself and Chris Phillips did. Go check it out. I put the link in there. We talked about all 5 of the SEC matchups there across the board. I got Ole Miss beating Arkansas, Auburn beating Vanderbilt, Texas A&M beating South Carolina, Tennessee beating Kentucky, and Georgia beating Florida. We did the college football playoff predictions as we stand right now, October 31st. I gave you the 12 teams. Go back and check it out. And then we did Money Making Weekend, 9 bets. We were 7-2 last week. We're on a run, folks. The roll to above 55% at the end of the year. We got a long road ahead of us. So just stick with me, guys. Remember, I'm Dave Shoemate, longtime personnel guy. Going to talk ball with you. We've got college basketball next night, guys. Next time I see you, we will be tipping off my guy. Joe K said it. Got the big one for the SEC that night. Ohio State, Texas in Vegas. So college basketball season's here. Got my Shoney's ball in town. Just got to blow it up, folks. It's going up there on the mantle. It's going up there maybe next to the Texas A&M LSU game ball from 2018. Joe Burrow's last loss. So basketball season here, folks. Another great weekend in college football above us. Guys, I hope you have a fantastic weekend. Can't wait to see you next Monday. Remember, Dave Talks Ball comes at you live every Monday and Thursday at 9 p.m. Eastern. Go like, subscribe, hit the notification bell at the SEC Unfiltered channel. Guys, rate, review. Tell us where we can get better. Again, SEC Unfiltered. All things SEC football, basketball, and baseball. Have a phenomenal weekend, folks.